If you would like to follow along, go into your working folder and open up brushfactory.psd. You could probably just pick up a blank document. It wouldn't make that much difference, but this is what I'm going to be using. This up here, basically what that means, roughly translated, is art for the sake of art. What we're talking about in this lesson is brushes for the sake of brushes, I suppose. Brushes are an important part of the architecture of Photoshop. Now, we're not just talking about painting, coming over here and picking up the paintbrush tool and painting a work of art. You can do that. Photoshop's doing some really cool things with brushes. I mean, they're really making some art-type brushes, and that excites me. And we're going to talk about those in this chapter. What we'll do in this lesson is just talk about some of the basics, some of the tips and tricks about using the brushes. Now, we're not just talking about brushes for the paintbrush. Don't forget your cloning tools, your quick selection tool, your eraser tool, blurring tools, sharpening tools, all use a specific size of brush to control the media when you're working with them. So this is not about painting, it's about controlling what you do using specific brushes. I have a brush that I made that draws hair. There are a lot of ways we can use these brushes. They're not just for painting. Now, I do have the paintbrush selected. A couple of tips and tricks here. Number one, we know if we click and drag, we paint something. Now, I'm going to press undo. That is Command-Z on a Macintosh and Control-Z in Windows. Favorite key in the world. So every once in a while when you see things go away, I'm kind of cleaning off the board so we can paint again. I don't want to use black. So my first tip is an obvious one. If you don't want to use black, come over here and choose a different color. I mean, that'd be one way you could do it. It changes the color over here. That's the painting color. I come over here again and I'm painting away merrily. But what if you are more or less art painting and the colors that you need exist in the document you're working with, like these crayons up here? How do I get those? Well, I guess I could come over here, pick up the eyedropper, sample the color, go back to the brush tool and start painting. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is remember the Alt key, and that's Alt in Windows, Option on a Mac. Hold that down and click. You just change the color. Do it again, Alt or Option, click, and change the color. Now, I'm also going to open up my history up here so I can kind of clean the blackboard off this way too. If I have a lot of steps, just a little bit easier. I love history. Matter of fact, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on in this chapter. So I can change the color. If I want to change the size of the brush, I've already showed you the shortcut for this earlier. It's the two bracket keys. It's the right bracket key to make bigger and the left bracket key with no other keys to make it smaller. I usually have one hand on my drawing tablet and the other one's on the keyboard playing around with these keys to change things as I work. What if you want to change the hardness of the brush? Now, right now we have a soft brush, which is fine, but I want it to go harder than that. Now, I can come up here and click this button, and I can get into the size, and there's the hardness. I can do it right here. That's fine. If you want to do it there, you can. But if I come down here and I'm painting, and now I need a brush that's a little bit harder, hold the Shift key down and use those same two bracket keys. Shift key and right bracket makes the edge harder. Shift and left bracket will make it softer. Again, let me come up here and erase the whiteboard. So we can change the size, but here's another way to do it. Now, it's different on a Mac than a Windows in terms of the keys you have to hold down. And there's two of them you have to hold down. You got a brush. Hold down on a Macintosh the Control key and the Option key. Now, remember, Macs do have a Control key, C-O-N-T-R-O-L key. On Windows, it is the Control key. That's the C-T-R-L key and the Alt key. Now, move your mouse left and right and watch what happens. You change the brush size right here, you get to see it, along with a little kind of mask showing you what it's going to do if you begin painting. But that's not all. Move your mouse up and down. When you do, it changes the hardness of the brush. When you let go of the keys, you're back in business. It did not paint anything on the screen yet until you begin painting, and then it goes back to your painting color. Now, let me show you one more thing. If you're in Windows, go to Edit. If you're on a Macintosh, go to Photoshop and go into Preferences and select General Preferences. You have an option here, Vary Round Brush Hardness based on HUD, Heads-Up Display Vertical Movement. If you turn that off, the default is on. If you turn it off, when you go up and down, holding those two keys down, it will change the opacity of the brush. I don't change the opacity that often, so I leave that on. But if you're big on changing opacity, that's a thing you can do here by turning that off. Let's go ahead and get out of here. And let me go back up here and click for instant erasure. What's left? Well, actually quite a few things. Let me use my left bracket here. What if you want to draw a straight line? That's kind of hard to do even with a drawing tablet. Most of you might know this one. Hold the Shift key down. You start by clicking. Do that first. Then hold the Shift key down and draw. Perfectly straight line. Now, the reason I said you start by clicking first and then hold the Shift key down is because if I keep the Shift key held down and click, it will draw me to the next point and connect. You might want to do that. But if you just want to draw a straight line, click first with your mouse and then hold the Shift key down, go up, or start again, left and right. Straight lines, perfect straight lines every time. Let me go ahead and get out of here. If we go up to our options up here, if you click this button right here, you can get into your presets. And we can make a preset out of any brush that we already have made, like the one we have. Just click New here, give it a particular name, and click OK. And you got it. Now, the new option here that I do like, it's kind of fun, let me do that again, is that include the color. Photoshop brushes are controlled by the foreground color. You can now actually include the color, if you want to, with your tool preset. It's pretty neat. If you right-click instead of just click on that button, you can reset the tools. Now, the only thing I've done so far is change the size of the brush, but if I say reset, it will take it back to the standard 13-pixel soft brush. This button opens up your brush area over here in panels. We'll talk more about this later. We have a blending mode here. We've talked about blending modes in another chapter. We have an opacity setting here. These buttons right here deal with if you're using a drawing tablet. We won't worry about those right now. We know what opacity does. Let me show you, though, a difference between opacity and flow. Let's take opacity to 50%. If I come down here and draw, let me get a bigger brush too, and I start moving, as long as I'm controlling the brush by holding down the mouse, I'm not going to get any more than 50%, which actually in most cases is probably a pretty good thing. You can keep rubbing and rubbing and rubbing and you only get 50%. If I let go of the mouse and then click again, I get another 50%. Now, the reason for that is because flow is at 100% over here. Let me close that out again over here and get rid of it. If I take the opacity to 100% and I change the flow to, say, 50, let's go lower. Let's go about 40 or so. And I come over here and I draw. Kind of looks the same. But watch what happens when I go over the spot again, holding the mouse down. The more I go over that spot, the more I'm going to get until I get to 100%. So the difference between a flow and an opacity is opacity works with you holding the mouse down and gives you whatever it was, no matter how much you play with the mouse. Flow is like an airbrush, and it allows you to add more paint as you go faster or you go slower or you go over that spot again. That's the difference between the two. The default is that they are both at 100%. Let me go ahead and take that back to 100. Okay, let's go ahead and erase the board again. If I am working with a brush and I want to change the brush, but I don't want to come up here or click here and change it over here, if I come into the area I'm drawing in and right-click my mouse, I get this pop-up on presets, and I can change my brush right here if I want to. Like you got this one right here. We'll talk more about how those brushes are made later. But if I want to, I just right-click my mouse. I can go right in here if I want to and choose a different brush. Let me go ahead and erase that. And let me go ahead and collapse that. Now, there you go for now. Shortcuts can save you a lot of time. If you're not always going to a panel to pick something up, it keeps the continuity and flow of the design going for you. So it's not a bad idea to memorize a lot of these little shortcuts and use them.